Welcome everybody, this is Microsoft 365 from Power Platform Community Call. It is 9th of September, so 9th of 9th, 2025. My name is Sara, and I'm a Principal Product Manager at Microsoft. I'm working on a community and open source and many other things with across our organizations, also with our Power Platform friends. Now, today it is 9th of 2025, and it's 8 a.m. Pacific time, so it's time to move on. So today we have two cool demos coming up. A bit later, we're going to again recap some of the assets which are available to you to get started on Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. So making sure that everybody's up to date on what's available for you. And we do understand that we're always showing a few of the same links, but it's important we always have new people within these calls as well. It's great to see the numbers actually skyrocketing and the numbers and attendance is going really well. Now, before we go to the actual demos of today, we will do also a group picture. We'll capture that within the Together mode in Teams, and we're going to share that in the social media, in LinkedIn and X and Blue Sky, typically. The demos today will be done by Reid. It's going to start by looking into SharePoint Embedded, so innovate with apps and agents and documents with SharePoint Embedded. Awesome storytelling coming over there for sure. SharePoint Embedded is a great platform for document management and agents and apps. We're going to see more on that one a bit later. And then Sara and Matthew are going to join us a bit later today. They do have an overlapping meeting, but they will join by the time of their demo for sure. And they're going to talk about building Azure Foundry agent to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So how do we take the Azure Foundry good stuff and capabilities over there and then exposing those agents which are created in Azure Foundry in the Microsoft 365 Copilot. And of course, talking about the differences between those agents and declarative agents and Copilot Studio agents. And there's so many agents all around, but definitely a lot of options for you to take advantage. And it's important to understand the advantages and disadvantages of all of these options. Now, let's go through some of the links. You might have seen some of these in the past as well, but it's important to understand, and again, that we have new people joining on this calls every single week. So we're going to recap them. Now, first of all, you want to subscribe on that YouTube channel, Microsoft Community Learning Videos. We do release at least one video every single day. Typically, it's 2 to 3 to 4 videos in every single day, which is actually against all of the YouTube algorithms and practices. But we have so much awesome content that we want to amplify the work what you as a community have done, and also make sure that the information what we do and the stuff features what we release from Microsoft are getting the level of an attention, and there's always a video guidance available for you to take advantage. We also have a LinkedIn page and group for discussions and updates. Easier to follow up on LinkedIn if you're on that side. We have a lot of open source assets available, as in thousands of samples and open source projects and tooling and SDKs and all of that, which is available for you to take advantage. For a lot of those open source stuff, it is samples, and the easiest way to find samples is using our sample galleries. So rather than going to the GitHub and trying to find the relevant folder with the one repo and to sample, and maybe the sample README file is not up to date and it's difficult to find, you actually can write AKMS community samples URL, and you just say I'm interested on this and this capabilities, and voila, you will have multiple samples available to get started on your journey within the Microsoft 365 or Power Platform. A lot of URLs to remember. AKMS community home is our AKMS address, or you can use the newer URL community.ms, which will be redirected to that same service as well. From that location, you'll find samples, blog posts, details, links, and a lot of things for taking it for granted within your day-to-day work. Now, we do a lot of community calls. We do have this kind of a model where we do one community call every single week with Microsoft speakers, and this is this call today. So every single Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, we always have at least 2 demos, quite often 3 demos in this calls, presented by Microsoft people. And that is Microsoft PMs and engineers and cloud advocates and so on. So the people who are actually building the capability, telling you the latest and greatest. The second series, which is happening every single week, is either the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or SharePoint Framework community call. We're actually looking into merging these to a one call within the future, so it will be a bit more easier to understand. What it means is that every single Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific time, there's going to be community demos call. So you can kind of set up that one within your calendar. And of course, you can always look advanced from the meetup service or from a social media, what are the agenda and demo titles within those upcoming calls, so you're up to date on which calls you actually want to drop by live and which of the calls you want to actually see as a recording. On top of this weekly schedule, we do have a Power Platform monthly community call, which gets up to 500 live attendees once a month, and it is on, I think it's on third Wednesday of a month, if I remember correctly. David can correct me on there. And then we have Office Admins monthly community call. David is doing thumbs up on the team, so that's really good. Thank you for confirming. Now, we do, for a lot of these calls, we do welcome community demos, and this is really important part of how we want to actually position and work together with you who are on this call as well. So we don't want to have product demos, so the products which are built for you as a product creator, but we do welcome community members who are showing, for example, how to get started on using out-of-the-box capabilities, or you build some sort of a sample for Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio as an agent, something declarative agent, SharePoint Framework solution. There's so many options you have built, and you want to share your learnings, what worked, what didn't work, openly within the community. Super important part for other people to learn what works, what doesn't work, and sharing and learning from your sharings. So if you are willing, please sign up for those demos. AKMS community request demo is the URL to do that. Now, we do have a lot of stuff and material available at learn.microsoft.com as a learning modules. These are completely free for Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. Great opportunities of getting started. And there's a nice tracking system there as well on making sure that you know which of those modules have actually gone through. There's a nice learning path series and all of those available in learn.microsoft.com as well. Now, I already mentioned the samples. We do have a lot of samples. We're closing in 2,500 samples, 2,500 samples. Yes, that is the right way of saying that, with Microsoft and community from one centralized location. The cool thing about this AKMS community samples URL is also that every single contributor has a profile page. So if you contributed 2 pages, 2 samples, 3 samples, you actually have a unique page there where your information will be presented, like in Rapia's in this picture, and then the samples which you contributed for open source. It's a great way of actually showcasing your impact on a global work and a global community within this one centralized service. Now, if you're looking into also using in, for example, agents and Copilot and integrating to Copilot Studio, or maybe using a GitHub Copilot to get started on building your experiences, we do have a new public MCP server available, which is tapping into those samples as well. So you're basically able to use that one to find the relevant sample for you, potential examples which you want to tap in or crown the input into, and that available at AKMS M365 Calories MCP. We will actually have a live demo on this one next week, so you'll understand the opportunities, what it brings for you when you are building your own experiences. Now, as you find the same sample, or you might be wondering, hey, I have this cool sample. I would love to get it actually available and promoted by Microsoft as well. We do got you covered. So Sharing is Caring initiative is something which David Warner and Hugo Bernier and Emily Mancini and a few others are running as well. And David is here to talk about what this is all about and why is it so beneficial for community to take advantage. David from Live LA, Hollywood.
Yes, live from LA. Thank you, Vesa. So, yes, friends, finally, yes, record scratch time. Finally, we got the date scheduled. We just need to flip a couple URLs, by the way. So if you go right this second, you're going to not see that date. But trust me, it's going to be there by the end of the day. What is Sharing is Caring? It is a program that provides hands-on guidance. So if you want to do all these contributive opportunities, yeah, I said contributive. We're just making words up. If you want to contribute, you can do that. We understand, though, that things like GitHub is a little bit of a hurdle because it uses weird words like fork and blame and raw and pull requests. What do all those mean? And the UI kind of stinks. Well, we're going to demystify it for you. We're going to break down those barriers, and we're going to contribute together. These are live sessions. They are hands-on. They are safe space, which means we do not record it. You can ask any and all questions because we all get fearful of asking a question when it's recorded and we think, well, no one else is asking this question. Should I ask this question? Well, if no one else asked it, I ain't going to ask it. I don't want to. Don't worry. We're all here to learn together. And that's the fun part. And it's a contribution. So be on the lookout within 24 hours at aka.ms/sharing is caring to get signed up for that session. As I mentioned before, we are looking at creating some regular times, much like the community calls, so that you can rely on knowing that every X day of the month is going to be a sharing is caring session. Just trying to lock those schedules in for everybody's availability and all that good stuff. But definitely on the 13th of October, it's a Monday, and we'll get that time set up. It's going to be mid-morning in the US there. Hopefully we'll also set some times that are favorable to everybody around the world, because we are absolutely a global community. So we want to make sure that everybody is included and has an opportunity. And when you do contribute, we want to recognize you for the amazing work that you're doing. And that is where our award-winning, because of all of you, recognition program comes into play. We have been labeled as best in class by Critchley, not just ourselves. And they have recognized our community recognition program as best in class. All of these badges are available for free. We're in the middle of superhero season, so you can get that Porcupine Rises bonus badge. And guess what? We're less than a month away from Hacktoberfest. So we've got that badge all ready to go. It's all branded based on this year's Hacktoberfest branding, so it's exciting. And you can get that during the month of October. And hey, by the way, if you join the Sharing is Caring, that's a contribution. So you're going to get a Hacktoberfest badge for actually attending and contributing on that call. So it's a great opportunity to kind of earn a double bonus. You're going to learn, you're going to get a badge. It's going to be awesome. Do need you to opt in, ak.ms/community/recognition. Absolutely no cost, though. We cover that. Just need you to give us your GitHub account so we can track the amazing work that you're doing, and we'll recognize you. Back to you in the Finland studios.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you, Hollywood and LA on that side. Really, really cool looking logo and a badge that hooked to Hacktoberfest. And by the way, Hacktober means that if you're contributing during October, then you will get that badge. And again, since the Sharing is Caring initiative is about contributing, and you will learn hands-on how to contribute, you will get a badge, like David was saying. Really, really cool opportunity there. Now, during the autumn period, we also have TechCon 365 happening in Dallas, November 3rd to 7th. Seattle, Atlanta already happened earlier this year, and Dallas has left to go. Really, really great conference there as well, TechCon365.com. Now, on October, we also have the 4th annual Power Platform Community Conference happening in Las Vegas at the MGM at October 28th to 13th, and there are some workshop days advance or before the workshop, before the conference, and then the post-conference. Really, really cool opportunity of meeting other people in the community. Then a bit later in San Francisco, we have the Ignite. This will be a hybrid setup, and it will be free to attend online, but there's a in-person San Francisco Moscone Center Ignite happening between November 8th to 21st, and optional pre-day on November 17th. If you go to ignite.microsoft.com, you can actually register to online live streams for many of the sessions as well. And then in early December, we have ESBC happening in Dublin. Super cool venue. Dublin is beautiful at that time of the year, and it's not super cold either, or yet super cold at that time, and especially not in Dublin. Last year we were in Stockholm. It was a bit colder, but that's happening in 1st to 4th of December. Great conference as well. And then already next spring, we know that ECS, the European Collaboration Summit, is coming back as the largest Microsoft partner event in Europe. 2025 hit more than 3,000 attendees, and next year is planned to be even bigger. ECS.event as some more details. Now, those are the big events, but there's a lot of a bit smaller events happening all around the world every single week, or almost every single day. So this week we have stuff like AgentCon in Singapore, Collab Days Finland is happening in actually Helsinki, Vantaa, or close to Helsinki. Vantaa is in the suburbs of Helsinki. Baltic Summit is happening, Collab Days in Bletchley Park is happening. So a lot of things are happening, and you can find all of these events from communitydays.org. Now, if you're making any events and organizing events, you want to get your event listed on that location so people can actually see what is happening all around the world. This week, a quick update on all of the news across Microsoft 365 Power Platform. Not that many news within the last 7 days, but we're getting back from the summer slowness, but still only 7 updates this week. So pretty cool stuff on user-defined functions when GA in Power Apps. There's also updates on the Microsoft Teams and also in the Microsoft Viva side. So Copilot is coming, for example, for Viva Engage, something to call out over there. Now, we also run our Copilot prompt library program. We do welcome contributions on this one. This is probably the easiest way to actually contribute on the open source and community side, which is basically sharing your prompts. How are you using Copilot on a day-to-day basis? basis. And we always welcome the Copilot prompt of the week. And this week, that's coming from Tunnel Vehicle. And this is basically more as a visualization. So basically using Copilot to create you the needed Mermaid.js diagram. Mermaid.js is something which you can use to create different kind of diagrams. And this is a great example how Copilot can actually help those things to be alive and make your life easier, which is really, really cool. Now, a few other updates before we go to the Together Mode picture and then the actual stars of today. So first of all, on the Power Platform Community Conference, we do have a special agent hack coming on October 29th. What it means is that when you are, for those who are registering, and when you are registering, you are able to opt into this 5-hour hands-on hacking event, which is happening and hosted by Microsoft. And objective is to have more than 2,000 developers building more than 100 agent-driven solution at the same location. Really, really cool setup happening at the Power Platform Conference on 29th of October. We are also running a global feedback right now for SharePoint Framework. So if you have done SharePoint Framework development in the past, or somebody within your team or company or your neighbors are doing SharePoint Framework development, please ask them to fill in the form at the AKMS SPFX feedback. This form will close, well, kind of close on 10th of September. So that means tomorrow. So we're trying to get all of the feedback in by tomorrow, and then we're getting a baseline there for the feedback and a lot of the planned investments for SharePoint Framework in the future. But that's it for the news. Let's go to the Together Mode picture, and then we'll actually move into the stars of the day. I will flip the Together Mode picture style. Let's see, let's do the beautiful looking auditorium this time. Let's see if we can actually make that happen. And I will move you in here. We do have 50 seats in the room. Pixel perfect today, which is awesome. So the network connectivity looks really, really good. Putting shirts on, everything is good. 50 seats in the room. Let's wait for a while before we start recording. And where did my Camtasia go? It went over there. So I think that is all good to go. A few more people in the room. We still have a few more rows to fill in. Let's wait a few more seconds. Few more, one more, few more, one more, few more. I would think we're getting there. So let me put the recording on and let's do some hand waving. Awesome to see you, everybody in here. We do appreciate every single one of you within this call. So thank you for joining. Let's do some hand waving. We'll grab a GIF animation out of this and share that in the social media. Thank you for being part of this awesome community all around the world. So thank you for your input and thank you for your support. Cool. That was pretty okay today. Pixel perfect almost. That's pretty rare. It's been pretty pixelated every now and then on these captures. Cool. Let me actually get that one away from here, and then we are ready to go to the actual stars of the day. So we'll start with Reid, and Reid is going to talk about innovation with apps and agents and documents with SharePoint embedded. And then after Reid, Sara and Matthew are joining us to talk about Azure Foundry agents in Microsoft 365 Copilot. But Reid, we can see the screen. I think audio was fine. Take it away.
Yeah, sorry, I switched over to my screen a little bit early, but
okay.
Thanks everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to match the energy of Vesa and David here, so you'll have to bear with me. I love coming to talk to this group. I've talked to you several times in the past about what's going on with SharePoint Embedded, and a few other people on the team here have as well. So today I've got a little bit of new information for you that I'm excited to share, and I look forward, of course, to all your comments and everything else. I'm going to go ahead and go off camera, but I am here. I'll come back on camera at the end as we get started. So I want to talk today about, I'm going to kick off with these 4 big truths that we've been running into. And this is something that really became apparent to myself and the rest of the team as we were traveling around the world talking about SharePoint Embedded earlier this year. And, number one is that AI is the fastest growing technology that, we've all seen in our lifetimes. Sure, a lot of it started back in the 50s, but, if you think about the last couple of years, it's been pretty crazy about how fast it's been growing. And, one of the things that really strikes people when you start talking about AI is the evolution, of course, right? And so, the AIs that you're using today are definitely not the same as the AIs that you were even using 6 months ago. So this is just, kind of the reality that we're living in. But the second part of that is, as you're working on building your custom apps and agents, they're all going to have a huge AI component. Agents, that's obvious for, but a lot of times people are still thinking about apps. And if you think about 2 years ago, you could have put together a reasonable proposal for an app that didn't have a strong AI component, but that's just not true today. Today, pretty much everything that you're building is going to have AI as a core part of it. And what we see as we talk to enterprises is that documents are really the secret sauce for these AI apps. Humans love creating documents. I think everybody here on the call is well aware of how many documents get created every day, every month, every year in their organization. We put all of our knowledge into them, and in order for an AI to really add value, it has to have access. And then the last thing that's become super clear is that an integrated platform with AI built right in is going to be your fastest path to value when you're building one of these custom apps or agents. And that's really where SharePoint Embedded comes in. So if you haven't heard of SharePoint Embedded before, the way that you should think of it is that it's an API-only version of SharePoint, specifically for AI apps and agents that use documents. And this is true for both enterprise, line of business apps, and ISV apps. It delivers a whole bunch of features that really make these apps and agents sing. So these are things like Microsoft 365 Copilot, Office collaboration, Purview compliance, and it does this for every app, and it does it as an Azure service. So it is important to note that this is an Azure service. It's not part of an M365 entitlement. I'm going to show you a bunch of QR codes through here, but I'll paste them in the chat here a little bit later on as well so that everybody has these. But this Start SPE, this takes you over to the Learn documentation for SharePoint Embedded. And we, on the product team, we've made a huge effort to make sure that this is actually very useful documentation. And so it is the best way to get started. But if you have questions on it, I'm going to show you an email later on too that you can send to, and we'd be happy to have your feedback or your questions. Now, when we talk about M365 features that SharePoint Embedded delivers, it really delivers the whole gamut. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about different numbers in this presentation today. I call this the 4 C's because everything starts with a C, and I like alliteration. But the one that people usually come to us with first, if they have an app that is working with files and documents, is collaboration. Because that all of your users are used to collaborating with docs the way that you can in SharePoint Online, right? Well, if you're building a custom app and you're not storing documents in the SharePoint platform someplace, collaboration gets very cumbersome. Usually it's some variation of the, hey, I got to download a document, I got to then work with the document, and then I got to re-upload the document. And that just isn't the modern workflow that people are used to. And with SharePoint Embedded, for your custom apps, you can now have this one-click native collaboration capability that your users are used to. So for example, if you have customers or users who are used to using the web client or the desktop client for Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, both those are supported out of the box. And I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. You also get full co-authoring, live presence, app mentions, sharing, and then of course preview for popular file types, things like PDFs. It's actually more than 300 file types, and so I can't list all the extensions that you can do, but it's PDFs, movies, images, all of that kind of stuff, all the way to specialty images like DICOM you can preview, and you can also preview things like the CAD CAM drawings. It's really pretty interesting. And then of course, if we start at the beginning here and we talk about Copilot, documents that come into the SharePoint platform, they come in and they all go through the same path, right? They all get semantically indexed, they get lexically indexed, and then they get the ACL applied on top, right? So that they're secure. And so when you're storing documents inside SharePoint Embedded, they go through this exact same process. Now, of course, if you have a strong compliance footprint, which most of our customers around the world do, keeping things inside your Microsoft 365 tenant inside SharePoint Embedded just makes sense because you get all those same compliance features. You can do things like e-discovery and auditing, data loss prevention, bring your own key, et cetera, et cetera. All of those apply to content which is stored inside SharePoint Embedded. And then, of course, if we round things out with the core storage over here on the right-hand side, there's just a bunch of features that you get when you're storing documents as part of SharePoint Online. And SharePoint Embedded makes sure that you get those same features, those business continuity promises, that the search and discoverability capability. You get all of that as part of SharePoint Embedded as well. Okay. So here's the big question that people have always asked me, and I have never shown this slide before now. So you are the first audience to actually see this. And I'm excited to be able to show it, and I look forward to your feedback on it. But these are the patterns that we're starting to see as we talk to customers and they start to successfully adopt SharePoint Embedded over time. And so pattern number one is document management for large SaaS apps. So now this is not replacing all document management. This tends to be very specific document management for a particular use case within that app. So we've seen this with Dynamics, ServiceNow, Salesforce, some clinical lab testing apps, all of that. And what happens is they take a particular use case and they say, you know what, for this use case, we want all of these documents to actually be stored inside a SharePoint embedded file storage container. I'm going to show you what that is in just a second. But the basic reason for this is really twofold. Number one, we have a very easy to manage security posture. If you're using one of these large SaaS apps and you're using Entra as an SSO, which a lot of people are, then you can easily mirror that over to the security settings for your file storage containers. Plus, because you can have a lot of file storage containers, it's very easy to segment these documents by business entity, whether that's an account, a case, or something else. So you have a huge flexibility when you are implementing SharePoint Embedded and tying it to one of these large SaaS apps if that's the right use case for you. Now, a second common usage pattern that we're starting to see emerge is this curation of gold standard documents specifically for RAG and agent usage. And so this is obviously an AI-focused use case. The whole idea is how do you curate the vast majority of documents down into a representative few that really represent the IP of your company, right? And this makes it very easy to integrate with the Retrieval API and the Azure AI Foundry. Now, don't worry, if you haven't heard of the Retrieval API, I'm going to be showing you here in just a second. And we have a section later on Azure AI Foundry as well, so stay tuned for that. Now, this is great for agreements. It's great for new document generation. It's great for translation, all of that kind of good stuff. So this is a common use case that we're starting to see. And then the last one that I want to call out is when you have sort of the specialty line of business or ISV app integration. And so you have this existing app, but you want to add a document experience to it, right? Without necessarily going down kind of an infinite development roadmap. And that's something which SharePoint Embedded makes easy because we're just an API, right? So you can integrate us into any app that's out there. You know, the most popular feature ask we get here is that collaboration. That's what I started off with when I was talking about your Microsoft 365 capabilities that SharePoint Embedded delivers. And the fact of the matter is that users around the world, especially when you're dealing in the M365 ecosystem, you have a certain baseline understanding of how to work with docs, and it's all built around what you can do with SharePoint Online. And SharePoint Embedded lets you easily bring that into whatever one of these specialty apps that you're working with. And now the magic here, of course, is that documents are always in the M365 compliance boundary. And so they're easy to interact with Copilot, search, purview, et cetera. And so those are really the three common usage patterns that we're going to come out in a second. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you a demo, but after the demo, I'm going to answer that other core question that I get, which is SharePoint Online versus SharePoint Embedded. How do you know when to do which one? Preview, spoiler alert, it depends is the answer. And I'm sure everybody on the phone is used to seeing that from their work in technology over the years. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at a demo app. And so you should see on my screen now, a demo app is just introducing SharePoint Embedded. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Microsoft. And so I've already cached the password and I've already cached the MFA. So you're not going to have to watch me go through all of that pain. But what it does now is it actually just loads up an SPE demo app. Now, don't worry too much about the app in this case, right? Because the app is just whatever the app is. This could be, some type of SaaS app. This could be some type of line of business app that is particular to your business. But what I do want to focus on is I want to focus on documents. So when I go into documents, the first thing you're going to see is this collection of file storage containers. Now, because SharePoint Embedded is an API-only product, I'm going to show you this thing called the API Explorer. Now, this API Explorer is something, I actually had GitHub Copilot agent help me vibe code this whole app. So everything you're seeing here, I didn't write all the code for it. I harnessed, our good friends over at the AI coding assistants to do that. But this API Explorer shows how we get this list of containers. And so you can see there's a standard graph API call up here at the top. There's some headers that you send over. This should look very familiar to anybody who's ever worked with API calls. And then the response is very straightforward, right? You get this block of data back, and this is essentially our drive names, and it's our drive IDs. And so if you're used to already working with drive IDs and drive items and drive item IDs, you're going to be very comfortable in the SharePoint embedded area because it uses the exact same things. Now, I want to point out, because I know we're on a call which is not only about M365, it's also about Power Platform. We actually do have a really fun Power Platform adapter, which we're in the process of getting ready for preview. And so I can't show you it today, but we're going to be on in, I think it's in a month, Vesa, if I remember right. And we're going to aim for showing it then. But don't worry, we've got both audiences taken care of, from pro code to, I don't know that I necessarily like calling Power Platform low code, but that's kind of what I call it. So anyway, that whole range, our mission is to really support that. But for right now, this is what the APIs actually look like, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And what you can see now is we start to have, these very discrete file storage containers that are very lightweight. Now, I say that you can have many of these. What is many, right? Many of these, when we talk to customers, ranges from a few thousand to a few million. We have one customer who says, I want 12 million file storage containers. And so far at the engineering level, we have said that is all fine. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to focus on this economic history. And I want to show you this permissions first. So when you're doing permissions, this is a custom way of working with permissions. All I'm doing is working with the API, and I'm creating my own user experience for it. Because remember, this is my app now. This is not SharePoint Online or something else. And so again, if I go into API Explorer, you'll see where I can get permissions, and I can set permissions as well. And this is now going to be kind of old hat, so I'm not going to show you a ton of these. But you get the idea, right? You create the request, you get the response, and then the user experience is up to you, the developer. It's up to you, the business, to figure out how you want this to actually work. So I'll go back to containers. And now what I want to do is I'm going to open up economic history. And I want to take a look at some of the documents, right? So you'll see that we just have a bunch of documents here. And there's magic in the way that this works. Remember, I was talking about that one-click collaboration. I'm going to go ahead and click on this automotive history. And you'll see that it brings this up, right? And I'm going to say, hello, Microsoft 365 community. Right. So you can see that I actually do this demo quite a bit, because there's hello world and this is a demo, hello Microsoft 365 community. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close that now. And remember, this is just the regular Word web client. This is nothing special, right? I mean, Word is special, but I'm saying that we didn't do anything new for this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And then when I open it back up, you're going to see that it's now gone ahead and it's, of course, saved everything in real time. And if we go through the various file types that are here, you'll see that we can do the same thing for PowerPoints. And I have a very boring PowerPoint presentation here, very straightforward. But of course, we can do the same thing with everything. Now, there's lots of different ways that you might store data in here. But all of this data, all of these documents have a collection of things that you can do. So for example, I could download it, or I could rename it. I could work with metadata. I could look at the versions. I could download as a PDF, delete or share. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Are you sure you want to delete it? You bet I am. Okay, so that's pretty good. But oh no, maybe I didn't want to delete it. So if I click on more, look, I have the recycle bin right here. And I can go ahead and look at this and I can say, yeah, I actually want to restore that, right? And so it takes just a second, but now automobile industry is back. So when you think about what SharePoint Embedded gives you, it really does give you all of the features that you would want for document management within any app that's going to work with documents. This is my "but wait, there's more" statement. So I'm going to open up this chat window over here. And this is actually a custom SharePoint Embedded agent. And I can start working with this. And this is now scoped to my economic history, and it's a standard agent that you can work with. It's using regular Copilot stuff. So I'm going to say something like, hey, show me info about banks, right? Because I happen to know there's some bank information in here. But you can do lots of fun stuff in this. So the other day I was playing around because somebody was like, oh, look, we have this whole custom thing for translating. And I was like, well, wait a second. I think I can just do translations right here in the SPE agent, and it works great, right? It's actually super fun to do. You can say, hey, translate this to Japanese or translate from Japanese to English or whatever language you really want to. But you get the idea, right? So you now have this custom agentic experience, which is available to whatever custom app you're building, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we'll get out of this. And I want to show you a search real fast. And because I'm already talking about banks and there was a Chicago reference in there, I'll just search for Chicago. And you can see that this is coming through just fine. So I'll go ahead and click on search. And when I do, it gives me my search results. And so ABN AMRO bought First Chicago. And so here we have ABN AMRO, a decade by decade history, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, I promised you I would show you the retrieval API. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select the container to scope my query to. And I'm going to say, tell me about Chicago, right? Now, this is all designed for back-end code integration because it's a specific API, right? And so when I hit execute query, it's going to go out and it's going to get this relevant hits. It's going to show the web URL. And then it's going to do extracts, right? And so you can see this is starting to give us extracts of various presentations that are in here, right? So usually it'll give you one to many, but then it also gives you this relevance score. So if you're out there building a custom agent of some kind, the retrieval API is a great way to get in and actually work with this. Now, the retrieval API right now is in preview, so there is some things that you have to do if you want to get access to it. But it is super cool when you think about how you might go ahead and build some of these agents and apps on top of SharePoint Embedded. Okay. There's a ton of stuff I could show you that kind of scratches the surface, but I'm going to go and go back now to the presentation so that we can finish off with a couple of really important points. And let's see, we already went through this one, so you get to see that again. Congratulations. Oh yeah, I want to talk about Copilot 6 ways. I didn't show all of these in here because of limited time, but I like to talk. You know how I said there was a lot of numbers? Like there's, 4 C's, and then there's the 3 use cases. Now we're going to talk about Copilot 6 ways. And so there's the M365 Copilot chat. If you configure it so that you can access SPE containers, which is it's a developer feature, you can do that. The in-app Copilot chat in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint works great. The SharePoint Embedded Custom Agent, that's what I showed you. The Retrieval API, I showed you that. Azure AI Foundry, that works today, and there's some roadmap items on it, so stay tuned there. And then, of course, Copilot Studio, which is a little bit more roadmap, as there's a couple of things that have to happen. But so SharePoint Embedded really does help you integrate with this entire platform. If you're talking about the fastest path to value for a custom app and agent, SharePoint Embedded gives you a path there. But let's talk about the big question, which is, when do you know that SharePoint Embedded is the right choice instead of SharePoint Online? And so there's really 4 signals out there that I look at. Number one, I look at this architectural thing called separation of concerns. So if you're out there building an intensive app that's mission critical, you have to decide how you're going to host that app and where you're going to put it. It's really interesting because SharePoint Online is such a flexible platform, you can often put it there, but you have to make a choice of, is that what you want to do? If you have a large critical intense app, maybe you want your storage segmented outside of SharePoint Online, right? Likewise, you might want to have segmented billing, right? And so the fact that SharePoint Embedded is an Azure service, it gives you that capability. Now, the second thing is you might need to store a whole bunch of different types of data, and you might really want these file storage containers instead of document libraries. Document libraries are great, but file storage containers are lightweight, fast. They're designed to be instantiated in code in real time. And it still stores data inside that M365 tenant, even if it's partitioned outside of SPO. And the idea is that you're modeling your business on that. Remember how I was talking about they can attach to any one of these business objects? SharePoint Embedded is really designed to handle that. Now, this one is really interesting because each of these containers has 0 access by default. There's no permissions by default, right? Your app gets to assign everything. And last but not least, when you want to have this custom user experience. Now, I know we're almost at time here, so I'm going to finish out pretty quick on a couple of other slides, but don't worry, I think we shared this deck in here somehow so you can take a look at it. We've got some great customer feedback from M-Files and M-Files customers. We just announced a partnership with them. They're replatforming to use SharePoint Embedded as a storage for all of their customers with their document management app. And a lot of questions that I get is this, how do you try SharePoint Embedded? We make it very easy and frankly free to try SharePoint Embedded. And so there's an end-to-end video right here that shows you how to do this with what we call a trial container type, right? VS Code extension walks you through it, super fun. And then I'm going to end on this slide right here, and I'll go ahead and come off camera. Vesa, I know we're about ready to switch over, but these are a bunch of links. I'll go ahead and put these into the chat and answer any questions that people posted in there. But I want to make sure everybody sees this SharePoint Embedded at Microsoft.com. That is an email that goes out to kind of the whole team. And so if you have a core question about, is it applicable? Do you want, do you have, how do you handle this situation? Send us an email. We'll definitely get back to you. We look forward to your feedback. All right. With that, I think I'm done. I think we're right at 20 minutes, right?
Yes, excellent work, Reid. Really, really cool presentation. Thank you for being so prepared. I wasn't expecting anything less, so for sure. But it's always a pleasure. So really,
thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the next demo as well. Thanks everybody, and I'll go through the chat now and see if I have any questions to catch up on. Take care.
Excellent. Thank you, Reid. So then we'll transition to Sara and Matthew, and they're talking about deploy Azure Foundry agent to Microsoft 365 Copilot. We did saw Sara joining, and I think Matthew joined as well, so we should be good.
Yep, we are good to go. So I'm going to keep this really short on my section before I pass over to Matt. Matt's the true star of the show today. So let me just share my screen. Yes, I do have a few slides. I'm sorry, but they're good slides, I promise you. So let's go ahead and just kind of show you. So I'm doing a little bit of foreshadowing before Matt actually shows you the code. So quick reminder of what the Microsoft 365 Agents SDK is. When we look at all of these agent components, the Agents SDK specializes in the surround or the shell or the container, essentially all of the work really that is not the AI model and the orchestrator. And it really specializes in these really 6 key areas to really help developers build agents and get them to where they need to go. So this is around authentication. This is around conversation management, state storage, actually managing this concept of an activity or a conversation. Channel adapters, like I said, get the agent where it's essentially got to be consumed, especially when we're talking about conversational agents, right? Which actual client is it going to live in? How is it going to surface in that client, etc. We have upcoming tool support around A2A and MCP as well. And one of the pieces that you will all be very interested in, which is that client extensibility that Matt and I talk about, which is really the ability to start with the Agents SDK and pull in other client-specific SDKs, like the Teams AI library, for example. And so we're working hard on that to making sure that we are really having a really great experience on both sides. You get all the flexibility of the Agents SDK, but you still get all of the client-rich experiences that those SDKs provide as well, and of course, specialize in. And then we also have a dedicated effort around Copilot Studio extensibility, of course. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass over to Matt. Matt's going to cover. We're on the show for across a few different weeks, and this week is around helping you understand how you can start with the Agents SDK, specifically use Foundry and get that to M365 Copilot. So over to you, Matt.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start here with, let's just actually start with it working. And then we'll back into what it does and how it works. So I'm just going to boot a project up. And there, as you can see, I was playing with it just a little bit earlier. And the agent is communicating. It communicates back and talks back to me. And it's reaching out and talking to Azure. So if this particular agent, what he does is he's, as you can see a little bit above, he's stock prices. He does various stock prices and communicates with stock sites. It is a real agent. It is actually connected. It is actually real data. So what did Apple close at yesterday? And I can actually ask it questions and it will communicate and roll back and forth. And it gives you a nice little progress experience as it's working through that. and it comes back and it tells me, hey, Apple closed yesterday at 2:38, blah, 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 on September 8th. Now that's cool, but I can also do that. Let's take my little team sharing thing and get it out of the way. I can also do that from here. So I can pop over here and I can say, what did Microsoft close at yesterday? Okay, so same basic experience. We ask a question, it starts processing information back, gives us some status information, some progress data about what's going on. And then as Azure's off doing its work in AI Foundry, it starts streaming that contact back, saying, hey, look, it closed at 498 yesterday. And I could say, what about over the last 2 weeks? Okay, so I didn't give it any additional context aside from just saying, tell me whatever we were just talking about, the same process over the last 2 weeks. And as you can see, it progresses that down and gives me some more information about what's going on over the last 2 weeks. Now, again, if I come back over here into Teams and I say, ask it, what about the last 2 weeks? Okay, and again, different experience. I was just talking about Microsoft in a different channel. It's still me, the user, Matt Barbour, but it's maintaining content that in this channel, I'm talking about Apple, and in that channel, I'm talking about Microsoft. And I can even ask that. What did I just ask you? And it'll come back and say, all right, you asked me previous about Apple's closing price. You were requesting closing price for the last 2 weeks. So it essentially understands that, oh, that's the context. What did I ask you? Okay. And again, comes back and it's going to understand that I've got 2 things going on. So in this case, you asked me these 2 things. It's formatted a little differently because it is the AI services answering these questions. And of course, you know how they can be a little variable in the way they respond unless you're very specific about what you tell about how you tell them you want them to respond. So in this case, we're just saying respond with Markdown. All right, so that's cool. How do we do that? So let's minimize this and let's stop this code. As you can see, the code has been here, sitting here running. I can expand this up so you can see the output view. You can see a bunch of traffic going on. Of course, we also have our wonderful console dump. So if you guys are have actually deployed this to an ASP.NET or app services or container, you can see what the console is emitting. But let's actually see what this thing is doing and how that's working. So let's stop it. So there's a couple of things going on here. First off, let's just talk about what's in the program and what the setup of the program is. And actually, I don't need that anymore. We moved that out. There we go. So in this case, this is a web application builder. It's set up as an ASP or an HTTP host. In this case, it's using web application builder. It's standing up an HTTP client, and we're using semantic kernel as the infrastructure to manage some of the brokering. We're adding in this thing right here, ASP.NET authentication. And that ASP.NET authentication is our token validator. So this allows us to make sure that we're receiving traffic from only the people that we want to receive traffic from and rejecting pretty much everybody else. Then we add our agent application options, which is the configuration for the agent SDK experience. Now, the configuration for an agent SDK can be done via app config, app settings, as you see over here, or it can be done in code. And you can extend this and add an initializer that creates the agent application options object. If you float your mouse over it, it gives you the quick link to where this is, and then you can drill through that. As far as what's actually in there, the agent applications object is how we control things like, should we emit a typing process, or should we clean up mentions? Should we normalize mentions? Because there's a couple of different ways mentions appear within messages that come to us. And then we have this section here called user authorization. Now, you're probably mentally thinking that, oh, Matt, you just set up a service connection, a service principal connection to communicate with Azure. I did not. I'm actually using my user identity to do that. You didn't see me log in, because it's SSO. It's automatically logging in. It doesn't have to be SSO, but it is the choice that I particularly made with this particular agent. And to do that, what I do is I add a user authorization section in the agent SDK. I add a handler. In this case, I'm calling that handler AI Foundry, and I'm pointing it at the ABS OAuth profile that we're going to use. And I'm telling it which OBO connection name is associated with this. So we're essentially creating an exchangeable token, which is what Teams and Copilot BizChat do. And we are exchanging it in the agent SDK for the particular connection or the particular permission that we want to use. Down here, since I'm running this in a dev mode, I'm using client secret, although we fully support managed identity, federated credentials, client certificates, and whatnot. That's just a bit more difficult to do on a dev workstation. But in this case, we're running it as client secret. And this is our authentication profile. You'll notice that there's two of them. There is the ability to have multiple authentication profiles within the agent SDK, all of which are accessible through an object we have called iConnections. So if I want to create a service connection or service principal to communicate to one endpoint versus another endpoint, I don't have to go write a bunch of MSAL code to do that. I can just define the spec here. And again, I can push this in through environment variables in my deployment if I wanted to as well. A little bit further down, we have a map. Our connection map, the agent SDK supports multiple heads concurrently running within it, and it supports the ability to act as a relay between two endpoints. However, it's expecting that it has to authenticate to those two endpoints. Therefore, we provide the ability to map a service URL or an audience to a particular connection, which means that when we communicate back, based on what this URL is, or what replacing it, the audience of the connection is, we will pick the appropriate service connection, the appropriate connection here to create an access token to communicate to that resource. Okay, so this lets us switch between, like, I'm talking to tenant A or talking to tenant B, and I need to change that dynamically on the fly. Again, this can be coded in programmatically. In this case, it's just in app settings. And then we have the AI services. Of course, we're communicating to Foundry, and we have our Foundry project endpoint, which is my endpoint in Foundry, and I have the agent ID. Now, it's interesting here in that you don't see anything beyond this, which means that if I've got multiple agents in the same project, the only variable is actually the agent ID, and I can communicate with different agents between them if I choose to do so. So we initialize all that through the program. We stand up an endpoint. This is our standard API message endpoint where we're receiving activity protocol of request. Activity protocol is the Microsoft way of communicating between clients and agents and agents and agents and agents to clients. It is a capability that we've invested a tremendous amount of time, energy, and effort into over the last couple of years. And then here you see that I've got two other capabilities. This is just something I was developing in this particular example and using this as a shell to work up, which is proactive sending of conversations based on poking this endpoint. And if we have time, I'll show that. This all boils down to invoking this thing right here. This is our agent application. So our agent application is a class that derives from agent application. It accepts, in this case, the agent options. That's the base thing that we need. In this case, we're also bringing through configurations and connections. And in the case of configuration, we're pulling the connection string out for the endpoint, and we're pulling the agent ID out. Now, again, this is because I built this to work with one Azure AI agent. I could just propagate the connections object through and let the message handler deal with it based on the context of the requested message. The way you'd handle that typically is you'd have one LLM and orchestrator that would make the plan at a lower cost that says, hey, I need to go talk to Azure Agent Phil. And then you'd pull the particular Azure agent configuration and connect to it in real time. And I'll show you how that's done here in a minute. We have a conversation handler. This is essentially dealing with conversation updates. So somebody joined the conversation, somebody left the conversation, some state of the conversation changed. A conversation in the Agent SDK world is equivalent to a thread. So if you ever hear us use the words thread, session, conversation, they mean all the same thing. It really just depends on where the person talking to is coming from, what point of view they're coming from. If they're thinking about the OpenAI stuff, they typically are thinking about everything as a thread. If they're thinking about things from legacy Microsoft or from the Microsoft activity protocol side, we call them conversations. So you'll see both terms. And then, of course, if you're coming from the services world, it's a session or it's a correlation. So in this case, you have a conversation updated that says when conversation update member added occurs, call the send welcome async. Now, these are our generic handlers. We actually have, these are our more specialized handlers. We actually have several of them. So if I were to pop in here and do on, we have the various ones that we ship straight out of the box. So the on turn error, on turn action, message reactions, handoff events, on events, conversation updated, so on and so forth. Before turn, after turn, and so on and so forth. These all share a very similar pattern. So for example, in the case of on event, you will see that there is the event name that we care about, the route handler, which is the function that's going to deal with this. This could be a Lambda. It does not have to be, as I've done here, a route handler. The rank of execution. This supports some future features that we have if we have multiple conversation or multiple handlers that hit the same thing. Allowing us to prioritize which one gets called first. And then the auto sign-in handlers. Now, the auto sign-in handlers is the way that we say, hey, before you call this piece of customer code, this piece of developer-created code, you must resolve the user identity associated with it, or identities. It is an array, so I can pass multiples in. Now, this lets me say, hey, before I go in here, I have to have the SSO identity, I have to have the GitHub identity, and I have to have, let's say I wanted to have a Facebook identity. I need all of those before I get in here. So this would then correlate to configuration that we have in ABS that we then propagate on. Okay. Moving on down. On message, this is our sign out. Our clear cache, we'll talk about the clear cache in just a minute, and then our on activity. So in this case, we're saying on any message activity, any message at all, I want you to call this send to message to Azure agent, and I want the AI Foundry sign-in handler, which we talked about a moment ago, to be resolved before sending it to this method, because I don't want to break my code in the middle. So if we come down here and we see this send message to agent to Azure, we have a little console write out, and then we have this interesting thing here called streaming response. So the way that the UI builds up the progressive code component, the progressive display, that is the function of streaming response. And this allows us to do status updates. It also allows us to queue text and write text in and write citations in and things of that nature in real time versus waiting for the whole thing to finish and at the end sending the complete response. The idea is that you're telling the customer, the developer, the user, the consumer that work is happening as it progresses through, and they're not left there saying, what is this thing doing? So again, that's the function of the streaming response system. Here we're establishing the persistent agent client. Now this is an Azure AI Foundry capability where we're setting up the connection for the client in specific. In this case, we're taking the connection string in and we're wrapping up our user authorization subsystem with a token wrapper header. And this is something that we did initially. We didn't want to carry an agent SDK, the dependency on Azure Core, because it is a rather expansive dependency tree. I think, but it forces us to do things like this, where we essentially have to wrap up the Azure our agent component with a token credential, Azure Core token credential class, and write essentially a wrapper to deal with that. This is actually the agent SDK code, which is at the end of the day, what we're doing is we are calling a subsystem that we have called user authorization. We're exchanging the current turn token, which is an exchangeable, for a specific scope, and we've asked it to use a specific handler name, okay? In this case, the scope we are exchanging for is the one that's being asked for in the request context, And because it's asking for default, this is a challenge with AI Foundry's way AI Foundry does things today. We have to grab a scope, the only scope that we can grab that allows us to talk to AI Foundry, but it wants it is set up for user impersonation, and we need to swap what the product wants, which is .default, for user impersonation, so that we can resolve the scope. Then we pass that on through. We return the access token in the correct form to the client when it's needed. Next is we have to go get the model. Now, this is actually a heavy operation in AI Foundry. For whatever reason, the persistent client wants to download the actual agent model and all of its configurations and components to the local client. And the downside of that is the resulting object is actually not serializable by us today. We're working with the team over there to say, hey, please give us a handler so that we can serialize this into our local cache so that we don't have to pay this 2 or 3 second operation on every turn. And in the meantime, what we've done is we've created a local persistent cache in memory in the agent itself, where we check to see if we already downloaded the model for that particular agent by ID. And if we have, great. If we haven't, you see this message, arranging the deck chairs, because now we have to go get the model here and pull that down. And this, again, is a expensive operation comparatively to what your user expects. That can take a couple of seconds to get this job done. If we already have it, or once we've resolved it, we create the Azure AI agent. Again, this is AI Foundry-based code. We're passing in the model and the project client. We then establish the thread that we're working with. Now, this is where we're using the conversation state of the agent SDK. And we're saying, if we already have the thread, great, return the thread ID. If we don't, return a null. And we will pass and create an agent thread without the thread ID. Or if we do, we'll create it with the thread ID that we have. So this allows us to take a conversation that we're interacting with and spread that across multiple nodes. And the agent SDK will keep the thread ID connected to the conversation. And it's also how you were seeing us talk to Apple in one channel and then talk to Microsoft in a different channel, in the fact that those conversations were independent and kept separate. The flagging the stock traders down is essentially I've got everything's put together, and now I'm actually going to make my call out to AI Foundry. We set up our context, our chat message that we're going to send in, which is the incoming request that I typed in. And then we use the AI Foundry's capability for a streaming chat message, invoke streaming async. And then we stream the response back and manage the chunking of that on our end. So now AI Foundry is streaming that information back almost a character at a time. It's ridiculously granular as far as it comes back. And most upstream clients cannot deal with that level of stream. So inside the streaming response, we deal with that by creating a buffer. We queue up a certain amount of text and we send it back. And there's some dials that allow us to control, or allow you to control how much buffer we generate before we ship it, or how long we wait between buffer events. And then
quickly,
yes.
I'm going to cut this away from the recording. We are now a bit more than 5 minutes over time already, but
Okay.
just letting you know from a timing perspective, but all good. So we don't want to cut you too short because we want to have a complete story, but all good.
Okay, so I'm just about done here with going through the code. I'm not going to go through and actually debug through it, which is what I typically do. Again, I apologize for being late on this and having problems getting in. So once the request is finished, we queue the thread ID back up, because if we didn't have one, we don't have one until it returns the first time. And once we have that, we queue that up against the conversation and we carry on. And then we close up the stream on the response out. At the end of the day, this is what allows us to communicate all the way through to Azure. From a configuration point of view, just showing you the other side of that, I'll actually show you 2 other things and run you through that. How did we make the streaming work? In the case of how did we make the user identity work? This is the Azure Bot Service registration. Now, Azure Bot Service is a routing and agent registration feature set that Microsoft provides. The version that you see, Azure Bot, in the Azure Bot Service is the public version of that. We actually have several internal versions. So if you ever use Copilot Studio or use dev.teams.microsoft.com, you're actually using the same system. It's just got a different face on it. This is the lowest level version of it. So here, this is your messaging endpoint. In this case, I'm routing all that traffic to my workstation using a Microsoft Dev Tunnel. So I've created a persistent dev tunnel that I reuse between a couple of different agents. I have my general application identity that I've created that I've associated with. This is the app identity that if you recall back at the app config, this is what bot service is going to create an access token for and what it expects to be communicated with when I'm communicating back to Azure Bot Service. The tenant ID that's associated with it, and then I have my SSO registration. My SSO registration is a service provider that allows us to see, come on, work with me here, that allows us to see the various identity configurations that we have set up and configured. So, of course, everything's being slow for me today. Just a moment. And now let's try it here. There we go. Go on, finish loading. All right, so it's being a bit slow for me today. I'll go ahead and come through the add a setting and see if it shows it up. We have service connections for lots of different identities that exist out in the system. So we have support for GitHub, Facebook, general OAuth capabilities, and others. So I'll move on past that. And then we have the ability, when you're building and testing these things, you can come right here to test in web chat and actually communicate directly from the Azure Bot Service here in web chat and communicate back. And it looks like actually in general, there's something going on right now. This is usually very, very responsive. The other aspect of this is the manifest file that we send up to the that we publish into the agent registration inside Teams. So this can be projected into the dev.teams.microsoft.com site, or it can be projected through the Microsoft admin system and registered into the environment, which then allows us to show up inside Teams and inside Copilot. In Teams and inside M365 Copilot. So again, those of you that are familiar, you have your bot identifier or your agent identifier here. You have your bot ID with the appropriate scopes that you're showing out. In this case, there's a set of command lists that we propagated and showed here. And then we also have this section here, which needs to be there to communicate with Copilot Studio, with the M365 Copilot. Okay. Now, scrolling on down to make SSO work, these two sections are critical. The valid domains has to have the domain list for where tokens are going to get validated, and then the web application info needs to have the app ID that's being used for the exchange and its exchange URL. So this is the expose an API feature of an Entra ID that allows us to do an exchange. Okay. Wrap all this up. You ship this up into the Entra experience, into the dev.teams.microsoft.com experience, and you get back to what I demonstrated a moment ago, which is your working agent with communications flowing through Azure Bot Service, all the way down to your agent here on my desktop. Once I project this back out into, like, let's say I were to actually go and deploy this, I would come back here to configuration and I would change my messaging endpoint to point to my production release endpoint. And that's critical. The thing to keep in mind is that inside your manifest, your Office manifest, this ID here and this ID here and here always have to be the same. That ID is the ID that is used to look up in the bot registration infrastructure, Azure Bot Service, this URL, so that the Teams infrastructure and the Copilot infrastructure understand where to send your traffic. That's one of the key things that a lot of people miss when they're setting this up, and it is a lot of problem that creates some concern sometimes. But that ID, this ID is what actually holds that all together. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I know I'm 10 minutes over, and thank you very much. I hope it was useful, and I hope it was interesting.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt, on that one. Really, really cool setup. And thank you for going through the settings and options and all of that. That is super valuable for anybody who's setting up the demo for sure. And we had some technical issues. So all good with going a bit longer today. It's better to have that as a end-to-end demo than cutting short. We'll do post editing on a lot of this stuff. Now, thank you, Reid. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Matthew. Really, really cool setup on this one. And of course, we'll have Sara and Matthew back on the call as needed to further continue the stories and showcasing the using of the Microsoft 365 as Copilot SDK and all of these scenarios. And Reid as well, we have him scheduled already for upcoming months as well. So a lot of new content on both of these features in the pipeline. Now, next week, we do have 3 demos on next week call. So we have a strict 15 minutes per demo rule for next week on 16th of September. So we have April and David talking about the Introduction Copilot Studio Academy. And that is a really high successful initiative right now ongoing for Copilot Studio side. Paulo is going to show you what the MCP server for community sample gallery is all about and how you can take advantage of that as part of your development or within your Copilot Studio, for example. So really, really cool setup. And then I'm going to actually show the latest capabilities on intranet reimagined with AI. So there's a lot of cool Copilot powered capabilities in SharePoint, helping the content editors and creators. And we're going to talk about that one next week as well. So that's on 16th of September. In the meanwhile, please take advantage of our Discord server, one option to engage within the community. Cool to see more and more people joining there as well. And we're always looking for feedback within these calls. But quickly recapping, the recording will be available in the Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel within 24 hours. We'll edit the recording away from all of the hiccups which we had today, so no worries over there. And then the next call 16th. You want to subscribe on social media if you are present in any of those things to know whenever new features or new announcements and recordings are available. But that's it for today. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you one more time for Reid and Sara and Matthew. Really awesome demos today. Great work, great engagement in the call as well. But thank you everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Cheers. Bye-bye.